Well, hello and welcome, everyone. Welcome back to our special urban agriculture series here on the Sense Making in a Changing World podcast. My name is Morag Gamble, and I'm seated here on the land of the Gubbi Gubbi people, and I pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. I'm talking with someone far further south from me on different country, Buttons, who runs an amazing micro mushroom farm in Melbourne, Naarm, Melbourne. So welcome to the show, Buttons.
Thank you for having me.
So just before we do start talking about your project, which country are you on? How do you describe where your project is based?
Um, so I suppose we're quite urban on Wurundjeri country. Yeah, I'm based in Elphington, just near Fairfield in the urban bubble. I'm located there in the hope that just to be more visible to the urban people in the urban area so that they can have more of a visual indicator of how food grows and where it comes from.
Fantastic. So the mushroomery, I maybe before we talk about what that is, I wonder like why mushrooms? Like what fascinates you about mushrooms? What is something about mushrooms that you've discovered in working with them that just knocks your socks off?
Um, I suppose I got really interested in mushrooms when I studied permaculture. I started growing a whole lot of veg in my backyard, and then I was trying to figure out what I could grow down the side of the house because it was sort of a bit of a darker area. Um, and somebody said to me, "Oh, why don't you try and grow mushrooms?" So then I went on this like whole new adventure of learning how to grow mushrooms, and it's quite different to popping seedlings in the ground. Um, and when I went on that journey, I realized there's so many different varieties of mushrooms that we didn't really have access to at that stage. Um, and yeah, I suppose I saw it as this new exciting place to go. And along that journey, I've learned that mycelium is like a wonderful, wonderful thing that's doing all sorts of magical stuff for our soil, for breaking down, um, pollution. It creates networks between trees and helps them communicate. There's just so many things that mycelium is capable of. Yeah.
And in terms of picking a mushroom farm as an idea, um, I wonder, and also with your world in thinking about permaculture, like how much of what you're doing is like a global imperative or a local imperative, or in both. I wonder, like, is this like part of your a global activism, or is it more about just feeding people locally? Like, why is it for you an important thing to
Oh,
do?
yeah. I suppose when I studied permaculture, I realized that, a big part of sustainability is sort of localizing the food system, trying to cut down on embodied energy. So if we start to localize our food system, it means that it's not traveling as far. Um, and that means we're not using as much energy to access our food. And I suppose the really cool thing about mushrooms is that they can be grown in marginal land. So um, it's easier to grow mushrooms in urban areas because we don't need all this sunlight and land, and we can sort of vertically stack, which means that we can fit a lot more growing space into a smaller amount of space and get a lot more food in that small area. So, yeah, I suppose it is my own little way of trying to be more sustainable for the future.
Mm. And nutritionally, what have you discovered about mushrooms and their health benefits?
Okay. Well, look, every mushroom's a little bit different. And yes, there are so many wonderful, ways that they're helping to sort of stop the onset of Alzheimer's, you know, uh, all sorts of things. Oyster mushrooms, which I grow, are really good for people who are uh, on the FODMAP diet. They can actually eat them, which is really exciting for them. They're good for, helping with cardiovascular disease, all sorts of things. There's just so many benefits. Even like, they're doing a lot of tests at the moment with psilocybin, and looking into how that can help with people with depression. So every mushroom has a different sort of exciting health benefit.
So which ones are you growing? You're growing the oyster ones? Do you have other ones too?
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, I'm just growing oysters because they are the most prolific to grow. So if you're growing in a small space, you're going to get the most quantity. And they've also got the quickest turnaround, which is really good for a small space as well. So I've just got some shipping containers. It means I'm really limited to, yeah, the space. So I really want to be able to maximize what I can do in that space. If you grow shiitakes or lion's mane, they have a lot longer incubation period, and so you sort of need a little bit more space for that. But I am hoping to start to work on that eventually. It's small steps. You don't want to take on too much all at once.
So how long does it take you to get from inoculation through to harvest with the oysters?
So it really varies depending on the time of year. Through winter, it could be about. So we're just doing like two stages. We're inoculating our. When I'm not doing grain spawn at this stage, but I'm hoping to in the future. But so from inoculating my straw to a fruiting mushroom in winter can be about 6 to 9 weeks, but in summer it can be about 2 to 3 weeks.
Wow, it's amazing difference.
Yeah.
So where do you get your straw and your inoculation grain from? Is there another like micro enterprise that does that, or?
Yeah, so I get my spawn from some guys in Carrum Downs. And then the straw is sourced from Victoria. It's organic wheat straw that we grow on. Yeah, but as I said, I'm hoping that I will start to do my own grain spawn. I'm really trying to sort of cut down on waste, and at the moment, that's still a bit of, well, okay, so the thing is I grow in buckets, which we reuse. I've like collected all those buckets from different businesses who are throwing them out. And so we keep reusing them and cycling them through the farm and washing them. Now, until I start to grow my own grain spawn, I'm not able to do that. So I still have that waste coming through, which is the grain spawn is still coming in plastic bags. But it's just a slow process of taking on new things and not trying to overwhelm yourself too much. So yeah, I'm slowly trying to reduce the amount of waste coming out of the farm. But by using our buckets, we're saving 120 plastic bags from going into landfill each week. That's, I suppose, a big problem in the mushroom growing industry.
Yeah, that's amazing. And what do you do then with the beautiful product at the end, the waste straw? Like, how does that get distributed? And I'm sure it's in great demand.
Oh yeah. So I do sell it. It's really good for the soil, mycelium. It creates air pockets for microbes to live in. It helps with drainage. It's a natural soil binder, so it helps with erosion. Um, so I sell it at the farmers market and to whoever wants to buy it online, but also I gift it to different places as well, like um, sort of farm projects, or I'm gifting or I'm doing trades where people wash the buckets in exchange for the mulch, because the bucket washing is one of the biggest labor costs I have. And it's still a process of trying to balance that out and make it economical, really. And that is a big reason why a lot of farmers use plastic bags, because it's not very cost efficient to pay somebody to wash them. Yeah, yeah. So that's what
Yeah,
we're
that's
doing with all
cool.
that
So you,
straw.
you kind of have a gift economy aspect to it, like volunteers coming in to do certain things in exchange for product, which
Yeah.
that makes sense. Yeah.
Yep, and there's a lot of mulch coming out of the farm, so it's probably
Yeah.
yeah, it's a pretty desperate thing of trying to move so much mulch each week. Yeah,
Yeah, but what a, for permaculture communities around the area, what a fantastic resource to have, because I know as a
totally.
permaculture gardener, it's something that you're always looking for, is particularly in urban areas, is more of that kind of high quality organic input. And so I'm sure there'd be a high demand for what you're producing there. I'm really curious
Yeah.
to hear about how you, like, what's your model? Like, what's your, I suppose, your economic model of making this work for you? I think I read somewhere you have a kind of like a CSA model, or you go to markets. Like, how do you distribute your product
Okay,
in a
yeah.
way that makes it work for you?
So I suppose before the pandemic, I was just selling to restaurants, which, as you would know, permaculture isn't very sustainable because you don't have a very diverse system, which was quickly shot down when we went into lockdown and all the restaurants closed. So I really had to diversify then. And so I started selling to farmers markets, but also I did start a CSA. And I suppose for those who don't know what a CSA is it's community supported agriculture. And it's basically a subscription model. So the community can just sign up for a subscription of mushrooms. They can get a fortnightly or a weekly subscription. And that really helped me to get through the lockdowns. And I also sell to box schemes as well. I have sort of on and off been selling to nurseries because we sell the mulch, but also I do grow kits as well. And I've just in the last year started preserving the mushrooms as well, because it took me a while to get that certificate to be able to do that food handling, which meant through for the rest of those years I was donating a lot of mushrooms to food relief, to the point that it wasn't really sustainable for my business, but luckily I'm happy that people were receiving that and being fed. So whatever we don't preserve does go to food relief. But it's really great now to be able to preserve that and sell pickles to people as well.
That's what I was going to ask. What kind of preserves you doing? A mushroom pickle. I've heard of a mushroom pickle. That sounds amazing.
Oh yeah, they're really tasty. So I do like a rosemary pickle, which is really nice on toast with cream cheese or through salads. And I also am doing like a soy mirin pickle at the moment, which is really nice in noodle salads. Hoping to do a bit of pate soon, and some other little things on their way.
Do you do
Yeah.
any drying of the mushrooms as well? I work with some refugee communities in East Africa, and they're just starting up little mushroom houses there at the moment, like each perma youth hub. So there's like permaculture youth clubs, and they're each starting up a mushroom house with oyster mushrooms, and they get so many too. And they've designed to dry them and make them as a powder, so they can use that to help like nursing mothers, and they find that's a great way also to help them store it when they don't have refrigeration or anything. I wonder, mushroom powder, is that something
I
that
mean,
you've thought of?
ultimately that's what I'd like to be doing. I have done like a smoked dehydrated mushroom powder, but I've found it really hard to get past to sell that. There's just like it's going to take a little bit of time, and the cost of me getting past to do that isn't really worth it at this stage. But
so what are they looking for? Like, what are those limitations? What's the rules that are making it difficult for you?
Well, it's just basically they don't have the food safety programs that are easily accessible for dehydration. And then basically they're asking me to pay a specialist to come in and get that written up for me, which is going to cost like $5,000. And then when I weigh it all up in the end, I'm like, once you dehydrate the mushrooms, they shrink so much that you're not really going to get as much, you're not going to get as much money for them, or the product is going to be such an exorbitant cost that it may be harder to sell in the long run anyway. So actually pickling them is more economical for me, because I'm not losing all that that sort of liquid weight. Because the thing is, mushrooms they're something like 90% water. So once you dehydrate them, you don't have much left. I still like dehydration is better for, like, it would be good for me in the fact that the product will last a lot longer. But yeah, the quantities that we're growing and the excess that we have, it's just not really worth it at this stage to pay that extra money to do that.
That's something they probably don't have to deal with over there, don't have those limitations. How hard is it to look after mushrooms? How, like, are there diseases that come through, or is it pretty straightforward, or do you have to be really onto it?
Oh no, it's like a minefield of mold out there. So pretty much with every breath we take in, we breathe in about 10 different types of spores. And as you can imagine, they're like the weeds of the mushroom growing world, and we can't even see them. So it's a constant battle. We have sort of filters on all our air intake in the farm. And then with every stage, we do sort of some sort of sterilization or pasteurization. We're mainly pasteurizing at the moment. But that doesn't stop everything from getting in. Like, still, us farmers walking through is bringing in contamination. Like, we scrub our shoes before we walk in, but we may still be covered in mycelium. A lot of mushroom farms or more commercial setups, wear hazmat suits every time they go into the farm, and every time they come out, they throw it out and put a new suit on if they have to go back in again. So, look, we're really trying to avoid that. What we'll do is every day, like every time we're doing inoculation, we make sure we've had a shower that day, we've like got clean clothes on. And yeah, but that doesn't stop, like all your everything from getting in. So from time to time, we do have blowouts. And yeah, I suppose I'm really trying to get on top of that as I go on. And a way of sort of keeping on top of that is having a really, you know, a good turnover. So you don't have blocks of mushrooms staying in the system for too long, collecting too much contamination. Um, yeah, and also I suppose I'm learning my lessons. Like in the past, when I've got contamination, I might just take out one of those blocks that are contaminated and hope that it hasn't spread to others. But I've really learned that it can be quite soul destroying, and you may keep doing that for weeks, and it just keeps you keep finding it. So I've found that the best thing to do, even though it is the saddest thing to do, is just to pull everything out and start again. Um, but yeah, touch wood, I haven't had any contamination for a little while.
Oh,
But
good.
as we go into summer, we have a much higher amount of mold spores in the atmosphere, and I generally tend to have my biggest blowouts through January, February. So I was thinking of just closing it down for that period of time this year. And I've been growing without any temperature control for 4 years now. But I have just got these air conditioning units, which I'm going to test using through summer this year, just when we get to those really hot days, turning them on to try and see if I can make it through summer, even though it has been this thing I've been trying to avoid, because I don't want to use those fossil fuels, or I want to avoid using too many fossil fuels. Yeah, it is going to be something that I just test, and hopefully, in the future we can move to solar
Yeah.
or a more renewable energy.
When you have a blowout like that, what happens with your CSA? Like, what's your discussion with your customers when you have a blowout like that? How does that support you in that kind of situation?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose I'd say like CSA members are the most forgiving, but it is trickier when you're trying to supply restaurants and also farmers markets, and you're having to cancel their orders all the time. They're going to take you off their menu, or they're going to replace you with a different farmer. So um, I'm lucky that the farmers market has been good to me. But yeah, yeah, it's tricky, definitely.
Do you
And
have
that's
like
why
two rooms, or are you just all in one container? Like, I was thinking, if you had contamination in one but not in the other, like you could
yeah,
keep going, or is it all in one spot?
totally. Look, I it's quite a big investment, building a mushroom farm. So yeah, unfortunately, we're a bit fragile in that sense. I've only got one incubation chamber and one fruiting chamber. Uh, yeah, I do. When I did some work experience up in Noosa many years ago, and they had a very similar setup to me, and they were talking about getting another chamber for if that happens. But it is such a big investment to do that, that it's not really something that's very high on my priority list at the
Yeah.
moment, unfortunately.
I was going to ask you about, like, where do you learn to become a mushroom farmer? And, is there like this network of young mushroom farmers around the country that you talk with and, learn together?
Oh, not really. I suppose I just jumped into the deep end and like have been scrambling ever since, trying to find my way.
Like coming on the top with like little duck feet underneath.
Yeah, and just like a lot of naivety, blind naivety, just thinking, oh, I suppose I went in like I did a course with Milkwood, which is a great course. Then I started trying to grow at home and just grew a lot of green mold. And then I messaged every gourmet mushroom farmer that I could see in Victoria, asking if they'd take me on for like volunteer work experience. Nobody would take me on. The only place that took me on was a place in Noosa. And so I went up there and just did 1 week of volunteering with them. Then I came back and started trying with the knowledge that I'd learnt there and was successful. And then I slowly built it from there, just like building it up thinking, oh, this is easy. I'll just like, multiply it and multiply it. And not really thinking of what the problems could be, until they hit, and then being like, oh my gosh, how do I fix this? And so, yeah, in that case, I suppose I would just email a lot of people in desperation, like asking questions. And there were great people who gave me advice. But at the end of the day, there wasn't really, there's actually not much that can be done when you get contamination apart from start again. So, yeah.
So is becoming a farmer something that you grew up thinking, when I grow up, I'm going to become a farmer? Is that like, where did this becoming a farmer like enter into your mind? And do many of your friends and, in your network also interested in doing farming or production of some sort in the urban area?
Not really. I suppose I was really into making clothes when I was a child, and I suppose I wanted to be like a fashion designer. And I studied costume design, and started making clothes on consignment and ready to wear clothes. And it just really wasn't an industry which was making me any money. So I was a bartender, and that was my primary income. I was a bartender for more than a decade, and I really wanted to get out of working those night shifts and living that hedonistic lifestyle. And I started growing veg in the backyard, and got so excited. Like, I was learning what the capsicum plant looks like, or what plants actually look like, and where our vegetables are coming from, and that was so exciting to me. And I mean, I've always been really into food. I'm very lucky. My mum was, really hell bent on organics since I was a child, and my father was really into, getting into the deli and getting all the good stuff. So I've always been into food, and I had thought if I wasn't going to be a costume designer, maybe I'd be a chef. So it was like somewhere between there. And so when I started growing all those vegetables, it was like, whoa, there's something about growing your own vegetables that tastes better. All that love and energy you're putting into your food, you can really, I don't know if it's just subliminal, but you can really taste it. And also, I can really tell the difference between good quality vegetables, organics, and not. The flavor is just so much more. Yeah, so.
And the texture too, definitely the texture.
Yeah. Then when I started growing and started doing permaculture, I realized how important agriculture is. And also, I started going and doing a lot of work experience on farms, and that's when I really became interested in farming and wanting to sort of really wanting to try and grow all my own food, and I was looking for a new career path. So that's where it was sort of leading me. And that's how I got into farming. And so, no, none of my friends at the time were farmers or interested in agriculture in any way, shape, or form. Yeah, but I suppose through this journey, I've collected great friends who are really into all of that sort of stuff.
Yeah, so is there a pretty big movement in Melbourne about urban agriculture that you're finding? Like, is it a growing
Oh,
thing? And
yeah.
change, did it change a lot during COVID as well? Like with all those lockdowns, I can imagine that such a big shift in
Mm.
Melbourne in so many ways.
Um, there's definitely a really big movement, especially I think there's a lot of young new farmers who are really all starting their own little farms and little, yeah. So, yes, there's a big movement. It's becoming quite fashionable.
Is this kind of like hyper local food? You're talking about like just
Yeah,
growing and selling directly in your local neighborhood in a way, or
yeah,
the
totally. Like there's lots of little pockets of little urban farms happening, which is so exciting. Yeah, but I suppose there's this whole, yeah, yeah. I don't know that we can feed our like a whole city from these little things, but it is wonderful in creating excitement around agriculture and changing people's mentality. Um, and hopefully, if we can be more visible with these sort of more sustainable techniques. And if there's more people showing interest in buying food from those farmers, then maybe, hopefully, one day we'll see a shift in larger agriculture.
yeah, you kind of like the thought leaders who are kind of opening new pathways for things to change. So I noticed
Mm.
that you're part of a farmer incubator group, a young farmers incubator group. It, is that still operating? Is that something that exists if someone is a young person is thinking, oh yeah, I'd like to do this? Like, who can you reach out to? Like, who are the mentors that you can reach to that can help support you in taking those steps? Or you just say, just go for it like you did?
Yeah, well, I think if you want to get into farming, the best thing to do is go and volunteer on farms. Go to your local farmers market, um, meet the farmers, ask them if you can come and volunteer. There's a lot of those farmers taking on what do you call like doing internships and that sort of thing as well. So that's a really good way to get into farming. There is a program called Farmer Incubator, which is wonderful, where they teach people about farming. And what you do is you plant, they generally do garlic. They each participant gets given a row, and they plant their garlic, and they go through the whole process of from start to finish, from planting to selling. And through that course, they go to a lot of classes where they talk to different farmers, do talks, and yeah, I think that's a great program, and that's really exciting. Yeah, but definitely go and volunteer on farms.
Yeah. And so what ways are you trying to, apart from selling and sharing the produce, what other ways are you trying to help make this more visible? Do you have like classes or events, or what kind of things are
Yeah.
happening out of your place?
Yeah, so I'm doing workshops at the farm, and you get a farm tour and you learn how to grow mushrooms. But also, I've been having a few school groups coming through. So I'm really keen on teaching kids where their food comes from. And I think if we start with the youth, it's a good place to start because they're the future. And they're particularly the ones in this bubble of like not knowing what like that beef is from a cow or whatever. So I think, and they get so excited coming to the farm and seeing things grow. So yeah.
Where is your farm? You said it was in Alphington, but is it on private land? Where have you found the space to create this spot for shipping containers?
It's, you think, oh my gosh, there's all this marginal land in the city, like surely we can find somewhere to set our farm up. But actually it's really hard, because a lot of the unfortunate thing about mushrooms is that we do need power and we do need water, which means that a lot of the marginal land that there is in the city isn't hooked up to power or water. So it was really hard to find a space where we could grow. But we were really lucky to find this industrial site which had space for us. And yeah, so we're set up on, it's just next to the Darebin Parklands on a commercial site. And the commercial site is actually council owned. So, and it's on an old tip site. So it's unlikely that they will develop where we are. Fingers crossed.
Yeah. So, I mean, what are the kind of things that you think need to happen, either policy-wise, government-wise, anything like that, that would help to support more young farmers to step up in the way that you have? Like, what are some of those hurdles you've come across that you think, oh, this is unnecessary? Like, if we could shift this policy or open the door here, that would really make urban agriculture so much more easy to get set up and viable and all of that.
Well, actually, I suppose when I was trying to find land to farm on, I was quite surprised. When talking to council, they're very excited for you to start farming in places. The only setback I had is the fact that it was a mushroom farm and I needed power. So if you want to start a farm or a little community garden, I'd suggest calling your council, because they may be able to direct you to a piece of land that is available. And it's actually, well, I don't know. When I was talking on the phone, it sounded like a lot easier than you might think to set up. Yeah, and because there is in council, there is a big push, to be more sustainable. So they're excited for projects like this at the moment. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
I suppose, but having said that, when it comes to farming, I do feel like we do need more government support. Food should be more attainable to the general public. And, these little projects that we have going, it's expensive to run them. It's expensive to pay staff, which is why, food costs so much. And without government supporting farmers or farms to pay their staff, we're going to have exorbitant prices for food when it comes to more quality food. So I feel like, I ultimately want, government to be subsidizing farming a bit more so that we can afford to lower our food prices and make it more attainable to the general population.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's subsidies that go in all different directions that are really about supporting things that are, degenerating the planet. We need to be supporting projects that are regenerating the planet and creating good, healthy food for people. Like it's a no-brainer. And I totally agree with you. So where do people find out about your project? How could they discover you? And are there any other links that you'd like to share with people? Because we can pop them down in the show notes below.
Oh, yeah, cool. Well, I would love people to follow me on Instagram. Then you'll get updates about what farmers markets I'm doing each week, when I'm, um, doing workshops, that sort of thing. And if you want to do a workshop or learn about mushrooms, jump on my website. Yeah, I suppose that's my little shout out. And from there, from my Instagram, you can look at who I'm following, because I'm following some pretty cool farms too. And then, start your journey in learning about different little farming projects that are happening in Melbourne and really all over Australia.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today. I know you're sitting in your car. I've just been on a delivery somewhere. Was that for mushrooms or for mushroom growing kits? Or
Yeah, no, I was like late for a delivery last night, so I said I'll come in the morning and do it. And yeah, got caught in traffic, so didn't manage to get back to my home office in time.
Do you sell straight from your farm as well, or you always just take things out?
Oh yeah, so I with the CSA, I have pickup points, so people can come and pick up from the farm, or I've got a pickup point in Brunswick as well.
Yeah.
Just to cut down on that, delivery factor. But actually, I think it's probably more sustainable for me to deliver unless people are walking to the pickup point, rather than a whole lot of people driving their cars to pick up points,
Unless they're
You
going
can
there
walk,
for
yeah.
something else, like,
Yeah.
like to a market somewhere else, or to a store, and they're getting all their other things, and they get their box of mushrooms simultaneously.
Yeah. So it really only works if you're in walking distance from the pickup point. Yeah.
Which seems entirely possible in inner urban areas, doesn't it? I mean, it seems.
Oh, it definitely is. Yeah.
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 Yeah. All right.
Cool.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today.
Thank you. Yeah. I have, when I started my permaculture journey, I definitely watched quite a few of your videos. So really nice to meet you. Thank you.
Thanks, Buttons.